there's so many different perspectives on what's going on here. And the more perspectives you get, the more complex a case gets, then it becomes less clear exactly what's happening. So being able to identify, sort of cut to the heart of what's really happening in a case when you have so many different eyewitnesses and so many different perspectives on not just the why things happen or how they evolve over time, but even the facts themselves, I think really shows what a real-life case looks like in comparison to a moral dilemma like the ones we were talking about in week 1, where even though there are some life-threatening cases that we talked about in that first week, they're very simple in that the facts were known to you. They were very, very straightforward. You had one decision to make, and would you make it or wouldn't you, and why? And here there are many, many decisions that have to be made all along, not just in the moment. Once you realize that something really bad has happened, there's been a fight, how do you deal with that fight? But as I'm glad some people have pointed out, going further back to when you first realized that there was this kind of racial tension that was building in this town, the presence of a white tree and what that means, all these types of instigators that exist deeply embedded within a subculture of the school, I think you have to examine those as critical moments as well. So you can look at a case like this as if I could go back in time, how would I have prevented it? You can look at it as now that I'm here at this particular juncture, the time when oftentimes APs become involved, now what? Now that I have the problem, the fire has started, how do I put it out? So I'm glad that I'm getting both of those perspectives in the discussion board, and I'm grateful for that and looking forward to seeing how you tackle that to the ground a little bit more in day 2. The readings for today I chose largely because of the background they provide. Again, like some of the readings in the first week, I picked a few readings early on that were really meant to help those of you who do not have a strong background already, either in moral psychology or in ethics from a philosophical perspective. Some readings that would help bring a lot of these big ideas together. And Michael Sandel brought a lot of those ideas into his lecture, a lot of that philosophical grounding in ethics. And so I'm trying to help you get a little bit more background on that with the readings. And this is one of the last days that I'll be doing that, where I'm giving you almost purely a background piece. And from here, the works will be a little bit more closely tied to the kind of thinking that I'm asking you to do, tied to the cases. So the next thing I want to talk about is the assignment. And the first assignment is pretty straightforward. On the website, you'll see that I have there's a box with course materials, and it's the syllabus and the course schedule and a link to the Blackboard site, all those things. Well, the last link on there is actually a link to an assignment description, and there are 2 parts. And this is really the big assignment. So in class, if you've taken a chance to look at the syllabus, you'll notice that a lot of the work is what's happening in these discussion boards. I mean, that's really the bulk of our interaction and how I get to see you and the kind of thinking that you're doing. But there's one assignment with 2 parts. And the first part is due at the beginning of next week, but it's a fairly simple part. And that's that I'm asking you to just interview 3 people. And you're going to interview them and you're going to ask them about a difficult situation or a dilemma that they had to resolve. And you can broach it as a moral dilemma, but I don't even think that that's necessary. I think that what you'll find is that when most people have a really difficult problem or a dilemma to solve, there's a moral component that's inherent within it, and that'll get teased out. But so what I'm asking you to do is pick 3 people that can be in any context that you want them to be in. So they don't have to be. It doesn't have to be ethics related. It doesn't have to be education related. It doesn't have to be a professional. It can be somebody in your personal life, anybody. And choose these 3 people, and as you're doing that, choosing your people, one thing I would like you to do is to try to find people that they themselves have something in common. So if you're picking all people from people you go to church with, pick all 3. all three that you work with, all three that have similar kinds of jobs, all three, have that job. That's all I'm asking, but I'm not designating what that commonality has to be. So then the part 1 description that link takes you to, I think, provides you the kind of information you would need and directions you would need to know how to put together the written document I'm asking you for. And essentially what you're going to do is you're going to ask a series of questions that I provide you, sort of semi-structured interview, just a handful of questions. And then you're going to provide a write-up that is just a synopsis. You're not giving me a transcript, so I'm not looking for a word-for-word transcript of how the interview went, but I'm looking for the thrust of what it is that they say. So give me the big picture, and then after you've given me the big picture for all three, I want you to spend a little bit of time writing about those things that they have in common and those things that you found were stark differences. And what I'm particularly interested in is as you interview people about dilemmas they've had to resolve, is that part of the decision-making process where they had to follow through with what it is they decided to do. So how is it they decided what it was that needed to be done, and then as they followed through, was there anything that got in their way? Were there things that were holding them back, giving them second thoughts? Did they actually change their follow-through? So did they decide to do one thing and then in actuality hedge it a little bit or do something else? I think what you'll find is it's very difficult for people to talk about themselves in critical terms. So it may be that you get the best possible response compared to the reality of the event, but that's okay. This exercise is going to help set us up for part 2, which will be due at the very end of our term together. And those directions are available at that link as well. And part 2 is where you'll sort of turn towards yourself a little bit, look inward, and start to examine some of your own moral failures. And I'll talk more about that in a future video blog. So if you have any questions about the assignment, I encourage you to open up a new thread on the discussion board and ask away. And I'll be happy to answer questions and help get you on the right track. But I encourage you to use the discussion board rather than email, because if you have a question about it, I'm sure your classmates do as well. Thanks, and looking forward to seeing more of you online.